Good evening and welcome. You're watching The Big Fight, a show that is not 23 years old, but young at 23. This is the oldest running debate show on Indian news television. I'm Sanket Upadhyay. Now, you see, this has been on for a very long time. This confrontation between the LG and the Aam Aadmi Party, Arvind Kejriwal versus Centre, since 2015, or one should say December 2013, this has been on. But one started to think that this is how it is going to go. And then eventually the LG versus Kejriwal battle reached the Supreme Court. Mr. Kejriwal's Aam Aadmi Party got relief. And then the Bharatiya Janata Party led government at the centre brought in an ordinance, in a way muting the role of a Delhi Chief Minister and a Delhi government. That entire matter was cleared, that ordinance converted into a Delhi Services Bill because it's a necessity. You have to bring in a bill. It passed the Lok Sabha test, the government has the numbers. It may pass the Rajya Sabha test also because there are many parties which are now supporting the Bharatiya Janata Party. But the bigger question that is being raised over here is what is the purpose behind bringing a bill like this and where does this leave states? And one of the points being raised is where does this leave non-BJP ruled states? What is the status of Delhi from here on? Could this be a template followed elsewhere? Which is why on The Big Fight, we ask the big question, the Delhi Services Bill, this is a federal structure debate because it's that point which is being made all over again by various political parties. In order to understand legal position, constitutional position and the political position, I have with me a panel of experts on The Big Fight on how they look at this. You see, many of the people who I'm going to introduce now have spent decades and decades in pursuit of understanding constitution, politics and legality. So let me introduce them one by one. Mr. Madhavan Narayanan, senior journalist, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Javed Ansari is also a senior journalist, and Aarti Jairath, thank you very much for joining us. Deshratan Nigam is a political analyst and an advocate in the Supreme Court. Aditi Fadnis is consulting editor of Business Standard, thank you very much for joining us. And Mr. PKD Nambiar, a political analyst. On the show, we begin with what we call is the first punch. Nobody physically hurts each other, but they make their point in under a minute. So we'll begin with you, Mr. Madhavan. Your time starts now.
Good day, Sanket. The point is that you mentioned federalism in a broader context, which is very interesting because the Delhi Services Bill is in some way not just about Delhi, but about the concept of federalism in India. And therefore, I find it very interesting as a coincidence that the Supreme Court is also going through the hearings on Article 370, which conferred a special status on Jammu and Kashmir, which has now been bifurcated into Jammu and Kashmir, and we still don't know what's the constitutional clarity on that. Then we also have Manipur, which is a unique case going on because Manipur also has some special constitutional status and it is demographically very different from the rest of India. All these three put together give us a wonderful laboratory case to understand what's going on. So the real questions are how much does the Indian Constitution give powers as to states and are there exceptional cases? Are all states the same? This is the main issue. As far as Delhi is concerned, the irony is that the BJP, which is in power, was leading the movement for what used to be called full statehood to Delhi. And therefore, it's ironic that first the person who led it all, Madan Lal Khurana of BJP, never got to be the Chief Minister of Delhi. Then we had Sahib Singh Verma. Briefly, sorry. So the point is that BJP is now having to fight its own statehood, which it created or helped create. Now, because it's the national capital, it enjoys a certain status, but that has already been defined in the Constitution as far as I know. If this bill doesn't get, even if it gets past the Rajya Sabha, the Delhi Services Bill, if it goes to Supreme Court, as it seems likely, in that case, we'll have the constitutional nuances being discussed just as we have been doing so in the case of Article 370. Yeah. So the essence of it is, commonsensically, there are two issues. One is, do you have a civil servant lording over an elected leader? That is a big issue. it doesn't appeal to our sense of common sense, where it's like the Prime Minister listening to the Cabinet Secretary and being bound by his advice.
Okay.
One last point.
I'm going to come. See,
last point, which is that therefore
1 minute time for opening comments.
Okay.
So I'm going to come back to you. Yes, Mr. Ansari.
I'll take shorter than him, so it makes up for lost time.
Okay.
As far as non-BJP state governments are concerned, this is a moment of despair. And this is an undisguised attempt to neuter not just Delhi but even state governments. The other state governments, they'd be wondering, if you're not a decision maker, if you're going to curtail their decision making abilities, capabilities, if they need to look at the center for every decision rather than the state government, who on earth is going to listen to them? Governments also run rutbe pe, and that takes away from the power, takes away from the rutba of state governments. And that's why, apart from the politics, that's why you see a lot of the state government, regional parties rallying around Aam Aadmi, even the Congress party, because they may not necessarily be greatly enamored of Mr. Kejriwal or his party, but they realize that today it's Kejriwal, tomorrow it could be them.
Okay. Aarti ji.
Sanket, federalism of course is, the core issue here. But apart from federalism, I think there's another issue involved, and that is the judiciary, and after all it is one of the 3 pillars of our democracy. You had a Supreme Court ruling, and then you find that the central government overturns that Supreme Court ruling with an ordinance. Then what is the value of that Supreme Court ruling? What is the value of the Supreme Court if at the drop of a hat the centre can overrule what the Supreme Court has decided, and decided in its wisdom according to the Constitution and the spirit of the Constitution? That is what the Supreme Court does. It interprets things, within the spirit and framework of the Constitution. But the central government just overturned it. So, I think it's a huge hit for a major pillar of our democracy, that nobody has, that the respect that should be accorded to a Supreme Court judgment has been thrown out of the window in this case. And I think that raises a lot of questions also about where the judiciary stands today in our polity.
Okay.
Sanket, in fact, Delhi's partial statehood is a creation of the parliament, and it does not stand in the footing of other states, full-fledged states. So that distinction is to be maintained, and once you maintain that distinction, the rest will follow very easily. Now, when the Supreme Court passed that judgment in May 2023, where it upheld that they had, Delhi government had the powers over the services, they also said the central government under 239AA3B has the power to legislate on this subject. Since there was a legislative vacuum with respect to services, they tried to fill that vacuum. Although I do not agree with that judgment, because legislative vacuum should always be filled up by the legislature, not by the judiciary. So in this case, that legislative vacuum is now being completed by way of this particular bill, which has now been passed in the Lok Sabha. So therefore, when people talk about the consequences for other states, that does not even arise, because this is absolutely different case scenario. It's a truncated state with very limited powers, and Delhi being very unique because it has all international embassies and so many things, central government offices. What was being practiced here was destructive federalism, not cooperative federalism. That was creating a lot of problems for the center. So it is destructive federalism versus federalism that has to be balanced out.
I'm going to come back to you to explain nuances behind these terms that you have used, because this is very interesting what you seem to be saying. Ms. Aditi Fadnis.
Governors have always been a problem, particularly when the same government is not in the power at the center in the state. I think a lot of what has happened today derives from the conduct of the governor. And in the past, we've seen how governors have ridden roughshod over elected state governments, not just in Delhi, elsewhere also. State governments have been politically been at an advantage when the governor has overstepped his position. We've seen this in the past. But I think this particular problem of invalidating a court judgment via the legislature is a very political issue. And while the BJP is quite right in saying that it has never used Article 356 to dismiss any state governments, we do know how it has used governors to undermine elected state governments. And frankly, this is no different from that process.
Interesting. Mr. Nambiar.
Well, we all know that Delhi is the national capital and it's an international city in every form. The only idea is that whether 15 years the Sheila Dikshit was ruling this state without any, in between there was 6 years of NDA government. There was no conflict between both the central government and the state government. Where is this whole problem have started? When Arvind Kejriwal came in and he wanted to become a super CM and holding on to, and just imagine Delhi has got the Rashtrapati Bhavan, Parliament, as somebody was telling about all the embassies and large amount of central officers. Delhi cannot be ruled by, cannot be treated by like any other state. Delhi belongs to everyone, every Indian. And I think the importance, even the security agencies, a large amount of security agencies even in the army headquarters etc. is here. So I think the way we are politicizing, talking about the federal structure, and Delhi first and foremost it is a UT, it is not a complete state. I think we are going far-fetched because of this India politics. Even when the Congress was supporting that cause yesterday in the parliament, I was little amused that why 10 years of UPA 1 and 2, they did not do this. When during that time they had Sheila Dikshit, both center and the
Mr. Nambiar, let me start by asking you only a follow-up question. And my question is, you say that Delhi is very sensitive, international city, home to many bureaucrats, home to army headquarters, central paramilitary forces, all the embassies. By the way, none of them report to the Delhi government. The Delhi government is not in charge of security of any of these establishments. So I do not understand when you make this assessment or statement, what is the problem with Delhi? See, in any case, the Delhi government had a very truncated and muted role. Three very crucial things. Police never came under them. Land never came under them. So then, to further diminish the role of a government, what purpose does it serve?
No,
they are not responsible for security, providing security of embassies.
You have actually answered the question, what you were asking me. The reason being, Delhi is special. There is no doubt about it. Now, will this state government, which has got a limited power, will be able to rule or service the entire Delhi in that effective way? No. For an example, most of the development.
I'm trying to understand why has this realization come only now?
No, I'll tell you this. This is very interesting.
The formation of this has always been a union territory, but it became a state union territory.
Sanket, I'll tell you.
With an election. What is the purpose of an elected government?
I'll just tell you, Sanket, Madanlal Khurana and the BJP promised that they will give a full statehood to Delhi when a couple of years back, maybe a decade back or 2 decades back. Same has done by Congress. Both of these people, whether it is BJP and the Congress, they ruled the country.
So you are saying why did
they have not been able to give it? So
fine.
there may be a technical reason that it is not possible for Delhi to make a full state.
No, I don't know. Either you come up with a fact to tell me what that technical reason
that
is. Maybe
technical
Mr.
reason is simple. The security agencies.
But my point is, does that technical, Mr. Javed Ansari, does that technical reason mean, I'll come to you, does that technical reason mean that you further diminish or mute the role of an elected government?
Sanket, I don't think it's a technical reason, there's a political reason. Political reason is they don't want to cede power. They don't want to cede control, especially of law and orders. They want to have their own man as the police commissioner. They want to be the ones pulling the string. They would never be happy with the idea of a single engine sarkar at the center. By that I mean a different party ruling Delhi and somebody else ruling the center. That's the problem. There's nothing to do with embassies and nothing to do with central paramilitary and armed forces, because under the constitution armed forces don't come under central government, they don't come under the state governments, they report to the center.
So UPA 1 and 2 and Sheila Dikshit.
No, forget
UPA 1 and 2 and Sheila Dikshit. Why it has not been given?
One by one.
May I say something?
Yes, Aarti Ji, and I'll come to you.
You know, this Delhi statehood bill was introduced when Narasimha Rao was Prime Minister. Narasimha Rao was a congressman. I think there was a lot of debate within government circles from what I remember at that time when I was covering it. There was a lot of debate in government circles precisely about this whole issue of security because of the presence of central government offices, embassies, paramilitary forces and so on and so forth. So it was decided that security, public order, that is the police, public order and land would remain with the center. But, having conceded that, why do you take away the right of an elected chief minister to appoint his own chief secretary, to appoint his own principal secretary, to appoint officers in the government of Delhi? That right has been taken away with this new bill that has come in. That was a right that the Supreme Court tried to restore to the, to the chief minister.
Which was overruled.
That's right. Which has been overruled now.
Is this,
and I mean, I'm sorry, whether it is full statehood or truncated statehood, an elected chief minister certainly should have the right to appoint his bureaucracy.
Okay. Mr. Madhavan, and then I'll come.
Yeah. Let me say two things. First of all, Delhi is under de facto precedence rule because of the ordinance that is being brought in. Second thing is that I would disagree with the arguments that because it's a national capital, it has a special status, because that has already been baked into the terms of statehood that has been defined already. It's true that Mr. Kejriwal wanted more and he hasn't got it, but to reduce that further is a regressive move, and we have to examine it on two principles. First of all, national capital means New Delhi as a zone, apart from public order and police, already enjoys the status akin to Canberra in Australia, which is located inside New South Wales, or like Washington DC, which is like within the Virginia state. So there is already a sequestering of the national federal capital.
The whole challenge here is
let him just complete. No, I'll come back.
The national capital has already been protected sufficiently on national grounds. So all the residual powers should logically be with the elected Delhi government in a democracy, given the principle of the constitution of elected governments taking care of whatever is due for them. Most important of all is the commonsensical notion on whether a civil servant can, in the name of filling a legislative vacuum, you cannot have a civil servant dictating terms to a chief minister. That amounts to de facto precedence rule. That is my point. And the last but not the least, I need to examine the constitutional nuance on this. There is no constitutional provision, to the best of my knowledge and belief, that gives any state. We have already gone to the Supreme Court once, and I'm expecting a second snubbing unless there is some fine print in the Delhi Statehood Bill, which I've never heard of before.
Okay. Mr. Deshratan Nigam, and then I'll come to you.
Sanket, one has to be very clear. So far as the constitutional position and law is concerned, it is well settled for full-fledged states. However, it is evolving so far as Delhi is concerned. For the first time these issues have come because confrontation, we saw the kind of confrontation with the self-professed anarchist, who himself claims to be anarchist, tried to position himself in terms of status next to the Prime Minister, so always abusing the Prime Minister, having a confrontationist attitude with the centre. Sheila Dikshit, I am not praising her, she had a wonderful relationship with the BJP government also and got her work done. Similarly, things could have been done now. What the central government saw, and with Amit Shah also very clearly pointed in the parliament, that the vigilance inquiries which were actually investigating corruption, one Raj Sekhar who was investigating, he was not being even allowed to investigate. So much of power and threats were brought against him when he was investigating the liquor scam, the renovation of the CM's house. So nothing was moving forward. So there was a constitutional logjam. And a government, accountable government cannot be run if the very same government, especially in the context of the truncated house or the statehood, does not allow the inquiries which are against themselves to continue. So therefore, it's an evolving process.
By that logic,
that's an argument.
Mr. Nigam, by that argument, any state government which the centre feels is not cooperating, allegedly not cooperating.
Let me answer that.
Then the centre can always come in and weigh in.
Let me answer that. Let me answer that. Let me answer that. That is why I made a distinction between a truncated state and a full-fledged state. You did not listen to me properly. Now let me tell you, that's the difference. Here, the vigilance, again I am saying it's evolving. The constitutional position on this subject is evolving, and Supreme Court was very quick to recognize in May 2023 itself. They said if there was a law in this subject, then the central government would have been justified. In the absence of the legislative vacuum, they passed that judgment. That legislative vacuum is being filled now.
Aditi,
therefore, they are justified.
Yeah, one more. Aditi Fadnis, after listening to Mr. Deshchattan Nigam, how much do you feel this has to do with the legality, as he explained, and how much of this has to do with politics? For instance, in his opening comments, he said he tried to position himself as someone right next to the Prime Minister. Now that is a political ambition of someone which ideally should not warrant a change in a law. Leaders can have political ambitions.
Let me clarify. I said in terms of confrontationist attitude, which was not allowing the two governments function in a cooperative federalism.
Look, the fact is, whether you like it or not, an anarchist is the Chief Minister of Delhi. People have elected him.
Yes.
So frankly, I mean, परोक्ष रूप से जीते हैं या परोक्ष रूप से अप्रत्यक्ष रूप से जीते हैं, the fact is that he's there. So you can't, politically attacking him is one thing, but using a hammer to swat a fly is not, in my view, a very good administrative method.
Okay, Mr. Nambiar and then Mr. Ansari.
See, the whole problem is that, as you said, 15 years Sheila Dikshit ruled this state. There was no issue, there was no confrontation. She handled two governments, one is the NDA government and of course the UPA 1 and 2. There was no issue. Madan Lal Khurana ruled was the Chief Minister, Sahib Singh Burma was the Chief Minister.
This could also be a commentary on those respective central governments of being slightly accommodating.
No, this is all the governments were very good earlier, and this government is very bad. And I think
flipping your argument around. This could also be a
think
reflection of accommodating central government.
No, I don't think. The problem is that the Kejriwal has been really from the day one. He was in the confrontational mode. Was he ever? Was he promised whatever he has promised? Is there anything he has fulfilled?
Was that Javed Ansari's question? Can this be a ground to change the rules?
No, I am not saying that. It is not because of that. This confrontational effort only is the one thing which has made all these spike. Otherwise, there is no. Between two governments are working together. Each one. He's the CM. There is a PM.
You are saying he is very confrontational. Can that be a grounds for a change in law?
Just allow me one sentence. Sure. Before we answer that question, you have to look at the bill. It has created a National Capital Civil Services Authority. It's a check and balance. They have not taken the absolute power. Please, I don't like this
against
interference.
The Chief Minister.
See, I never interfere.
But
you will get your chance.
I agree.
You will get your chance.
But do not distort facts.
See, let me tell you. I was about to speak, but you jump in.
I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
The fact remains that there they have made in such a manner where Chief Minister is also party in that particular authority with two bureaucrats and ultimate power given to the Lieutenant Governor. However, what happens? Not all decisions where there will be problem, decisions which may be unconstitutional, vigilant inquiries which are being stopped by the state government against itself. These are the decisions. Allow it to function. This is a check and balance created in terms of circumstances. And this particular act, which will become an act, is a creation of a parliament subject to amendments in future. It is not creation of like states, like creation of states, where if you have to bifurcate a state, you have to take a permission from that particular state or that particular assembly. So this is absolutely different. This state is a creation of a parliament and subject to further
most of the things that both of you seem to be saying, Javed Ansari, Mr. Javed Ansari, is that Mr. Kejriwal was way too confrontational. Two, he was trying to position himself as a someone right next to the Prime Minister.
So what?
Yeah, exactly. And
complete it. This is not in isolation, these two states.
Yeah, and third, he says that this is a bill which is subject to further amendment, like all bills.
Any bill.
Like any bill. Can any of these reasons be a ground to mute or truncate an elected government? That's my only limited point. Javed Ansari, and then I'll come back.
State is self-truncated.
Okay. Now
state is self-truncated.
Yeah. Sanket, can Mr. Nigam, who knows law better than most of us, educate us on, is there any one provision in the Constitution which says that if you oppose the Prime Minister or the ruling party at the center, so therefore your wings will be clipped? Is
I
there
never said that.
No, no.
I never said that.
No, what is the end meaning of the?
No, end meaning is your choice. You are choosing it to, interpret
because
it
he
that
was
way.
confrontationalist.
No,
So,
I said
so
that was leading
Okay,
to.
sir, now you are interrupting me.
No, you are quoting me. You are quoting me.
One by one. I'll give you a right to reply.
I need to say.
Yes.
So he needs to be clipped because he was confrontationalist, because he was ambitious, he was positioning himself as a challenger. Which law, I mean, is there a law in the constitution which says that that an elected person, an elected chief minister who's been elected multiple times, he will not be able to take decisions, but somebody who's been imposed by the center, he will be the big boss, he will decide, he'll have a final word on postings? I mean, what kind of a logic is this?
Okay, yeah, I'll come to you. First, Mr. Madhav.
And last
One minute,
How many-
one by one.
Yeah, then
One by one. Yeah.
And the fact that he was being obstructionist, that he was not allowing a free and fair inquiry by the Vigilance Commission, there are multiple people in this country who believe that the center does not allow a free and fair inquiry against their very own. So should a similar law be brought against the center now?
Okay,
how
okay.
many-
One more. Mr. Madhavan, my question to you. First, my question. Many parties who have state governments have given their support to the Delhi Services Bill. They are non-BJP parties, right? Non-BJP states. Now, Mr. Kejriwal's party says, today it is happening to us, tomorrow it could happen to you. It may be your majburi to support this bill right now, but you are throwing open a door where, to quote them, this demon is going to attack you as well. So do you feel that this is a valid argument being made?
Absolutely. I think it's a valid argument for a very simple fact. I'll put it in a one-liner. The constitutional is political, but the political is not necessarily constitutional. That is the nuance we need to address when we discuss vacuums here. So the federal structure of this country is undermined whenever an elected government is overrun by even an office of the governor, and when it's done through a 3-member committee that has civil servants and one politically appointed lieutenant governor, it's a QED situation. Now, most important, I want to also add that from the corruption point of view, the central government has also been alleged to have been corrupt in many ways, and there is no independent authority probing it. The irony is that Arvind Kejriwal is being discussed, but it's not the issue. It could be X or Y. But Kejriwal is the one who brought in the concept of the Lokpal as his political springboard. So, in the absence of any institution like an ombudsman,
Lokpal in Delhi?
Yeah, which is
Where is the Lokpal in
yeah,
Delhi?
one more. It's another thing.
It is only the concept.
It's another thing. It's another thing, Mr. Madhavan, that the Lokpal could not see the light of the day. Mr. Nambiar, let him complete.
No, I'll tell you.
I've understood your point.
I don't want any more Messiah to be created with the Kejriwal ideology.
I think
what is the Kejriwal signature?
Sanket,
No bangla, no Gadi.
Yeah, he has allegedly made a
I
huge
think
bungalow.
I want to raise the level of the argument.
Do you get a Wi-Fi, public
Mr. Nambiar,
Wi-Fi?
one moment, please, not like this. Not like this, please. I'll come to you. You can make your point.
In any probe situation, an independent inquiry is required, not a political inquiry. And to that extent, a judicially appointed inquiry committee or an ombudsman are the right party to do it. You cannot have a legislative bulldozing of a legislature by invoking some vacuum position. And this is, I'm quite sure the Supreme Court will say what I am saying.
Which
right
also
now.
brings me, one by one to you, because I want to know a legal position.
No,
See,
I want to bring politics
Sure,
into it.
please do bring politics,
Yeah.
but my question is, how long can you keep having law from center, then going back to the Supreme Court, law from center? I mean, this is appears very cyclical. Yes, I'll ask you this question.
I want to bring some politics into it. And I think, the BJP needs to do some introspection and ask itself why, after having formed the first elected government in Delhi, why has it never been voted back to power in Delhi? For 3 terms, it was the Congress government led by Sheila Dikshit. For 2 terms, it has been the Aam Aadmi Party government led by Arvind Kejriwal.
So having failed to win elections in Delhi, do you think they're trying to rule by proxy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that's something that is hurting the BJP, that they spearheaded this whole thing, for statehood, led by Madanlal Khurana.
And never came back after
And Delhi
98.
has always been their guard. I mean, even before statehood, you know, when it was the chief executive councillor and everything, the BJP was a
The
very
MCD.
strong, MCD, the BJP was a very strong force. But for the last, 20 something years, it hasn't had a look into power. And this time they lost the MCD election as well. So I think that something is rankling inside the BJP. And you know,
And
I
that's
mean,
the genesis
That's the
behind
main
this bill.
point.
that's right,
the
absolutely.
That
This
may
is
not be
purely
Okay,
political.
sure.
Purely political. You can put as much legal, dressing
Gloss
on
over
it
it.
as you want to.
Yeah,
But
you,
it is
you may try to
purely
make
political.
it, the argument is you may try to put legal lipstick or legal gloss on this issue. It is basically political.
When you talk of constitution and law, there is no gloss. It is black and white, very clear. It may be for political analysts like Aarti, maybe a lipstick, but there is no lipstick in law.
She didn't use that word, I did.
I mean, therefore, since the conversation, so
Yeah.
and a good one that too. So the fact remains, so far as vigilance departments are concerned, which was a specific point which was raised, in all states it's with the state governments, and central government has no power to interfere there. But in this case, Parliament ensured under 239AA3B to give absolute power to the Parliament to make laws about the partial state of Delhi. Please understand that. So there is no comparison with other states.
Let me
It's-
interpret. Partial means partiality
the
now.
central government cannot interfere in those states' vigilance inquiry, except in extraordinary circumstances where CBI comes into play through a court order or when the state themselves request. In this case also, judicial inquiry or scrutiny or subject to monitoring by the judiciary is an extraordinary circumstances, not in the ordinary course of law.
The very
Please understand.
cyclic nature of relief, struck down by the court,
No,
ordinance being brought in.
That's the judicial review, the power Supreme Court has, but the very same judgment quotes that since there is no law on the subject, then they quote 239AA3B that Parliament has that power.
So I think it is very
they are
interesting.
exercising that power.
I think it is very interesting that thanks to this confrontation, we will have some greater, Ms. Aditi Fadnis, do you feel that in due course from now, maybe not immediately, but maybe in due course, we'll be able to frame or have a better understanding of what to do with Delhi? Because right now, according to this law, the elected government of Delhi, I do not know what role it is going to play. Babus are not going to listen to them.
We are setting the stage for a continuing sort of disruption of politics and bureaucracy and administration in Delhi for the next couple of years. Take this from me.
I mean, the way I look at this,
Aditi, I'll call it
Wait.
evolution.
Well, you can call it evolution, you can call it revolution, you can call it what you like. But the fact is, nothing will get done in
I'll
Delhi.
tell you this, evolution and revolution and devolution will be
Cannot be
affected by
solved through manipulation.
okay, another
These
issue.
are natural process.
No,
What we
no,
are
no.
seeing-
But the
natural
point is,
processes.
what
what we are seeing.
do 2 crore plus people of Delhi do?
No, absolutely.
Let's just hope that they do not become the collateral.
I'm glad you mentioned 2 crore.
Delhi, who's
No, where
going
is
to
the question
resolve
of
those
being-
of garbage, sewage, bad roads? Who's going to resolve
Sanket,
those
I want to
problems?
mention-
Ma'am, I think you actually nailed it. I
One-
think the entire interaction
Sorry.
of today, how many after 8 years, if you look back with an Aam Aadmi government coming into power, how many more slums have added to Delhi or how many
One
more
small point,
slums
Sanket,
have come down?
statistically-
The only thing is that where we are sitting right now, just in 5-kilometer radius, you will have almost 5-6 slums which has added.
No, Mr.
to the
Nambiar,
new-
come on.
No, no, the idea is that
slum clusters
the
are not
people-
unique to Delhi.
No, no, no.
I mean, there are some
Prosperity,
clusters in
they are
Uttar Pradesh.
increasing.
No, my dear
In
friend,
Haryana
you are
also.
making
No,
a wrong
I
thing.
think
You are
their
making a
number
wrong
is
statement.
increasing.
The reason how many of them have
Let's
been
swap
I don't know. I mean, I don't have a definite
Let's
study on the
swap
increase in the
anything
slum
that upsets
clusters
them.
of other.
I will give you a fact.
middle
Okay,
class.
I will take you out.
Okay, okay.
I will
La-
take you
last
out
one.
all of
Swap
you.
anything that upsets
I'm
the
glad-
middle classes.
I'm glad you
Swap
mentioned
Ma'am,
down,
you said that
swap
how would
straight
it
down,
impact
swap all
the-
this. Just
Sanket,
have the middle classes.
I'm glad-
That's all. A
RTG,
clean,
RTG,
neat
it's not the
city.
middle class which
Okay,
only
one
I'm
moment.
glad you
Mr.
mentioned-
Madhavan's
You
last
also have the
comment,
lower
please.
class.
One moment, last comment.
I'm glad you mentioned 2 crore because 2 crore is nearly the population of all of Australia. And if that is the size of the state you're dealing with, it's untenable that the people of this place do not get to choose the leader who has sufficient defined powers. So if the Supreme Court for all of us define very clearly the ambit of the Chief Minister, whether it's legislative, even
Otherwise
if it
also
involves
the-
vigilance, even if it involves vigilance issues, even if it involves corruption probes, if it rests upon the Supreme Court to tell us exactly under the preamble of the Constitution that promises social, economic and political justice.
So I
what
think,
is, so the
I think
239 doesn't matter.
All
the
eyes,
preamble matters.
Exactly. All eyes on the Rajya Sabha. It will be interesting to see which party, because Aam Aadmi Party is appealing to many of the parties who went with the BJP in Lok Sabha. They are appealing and they wish that these parties will come along and vote with them against this bill. And then, of course, the Supreme Court. Let's see what happens. But thank you very much for joining us on this part of the week.